So, how would you like to start this?
Well, it's a pleasure to get to speak with you. I'm glad that we were connected over your channel, which I've really enjoyed looking through some of the stuff you've been doing with the 2000 Spider-Man. It's been really entertaining and interesting. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to you today a little bit about kind of what we've been looking at this week in Toy Story land with the Toy Story 2 action game, Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue. It's been interesting to sort of comb through not only just the game files themselves, but some of the history around them. About 3 years ago, I had a correspondence with Andy Blythe and Martin Joustra, who composed the score, the soundtrack for this game. And it was funny, they were sort of recalling how they met up with John Burton and Traveler's Tales by opening up a studio coincidentally across the street. And then we got this wonderful score just a few years later. And ever since then, it's been really interesting just to sort of follow and dig more into what's beyond just the incredible game itself, some of the things that lie beneath the files.
Oh so do I actually have the high quality soundtrack then?
No, so the game files contain the uncompressed wave versions of all the music in the game. But aside from that, I don't have any recordings, although Blythe and Joustra actually do host some of the soundtrack music on their website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they've composed scores not only for other Disney Interactive contracts that Traveler's Tales worked on, but for a bunch of other things in television and film and other titles as well.
So yeah, maybe go over what we've learned so far in the modern side.
Yeah, absolutely. So what sort of initiated my interest in looking beyond the files was getting an understanding of just the file structure of the game, which from a computer science standpoint has just been an interest of mine, understanding how these assets are packed. Originally, I was interested in getting into the 3D files. I'm still working on understanding that, but I did have a lot of success in getting into the texture files for the game. And to sort of understand how I'm doing that, I think it's interesting to look a little bit at the development history, where Traveler's Tales started with the PlayStation version, as evidenced by the demos that we've seen of the game, as well as the actual file hierarchy of the PC port, which contains a lot of the original files that would have appeared on the PlayStation disc. We see those files, those .raw files existing, as well as a log from a program that we believe might be a proprietary program that Traveler's Tales is using called PCONV or pconvert, which ported the PlayStation textures from the PlayStation compressed and encoded files to a uncompressed .ngn file, which the PC version of the game uses to texture the 3D models in the game. What's interesting about these files is that they are a sequential layout of all sorts of different pieces of information for the textures, but especially these uncompressed bitmaps. So inside of the NGN files are the NGNs you can think of as a container for multiple different bitmap textures that appear on the models throughout the game. And using an application, you can actually extract these bitmaps from the NGN files and then modify them to your heart's content. And then using a method of binary insertion, you can sort of inject the modified bitmaps over the bitmap in the game. And when the game loads back up, you can't tell the difference, except it will display the modified texture. So this essentially has opened up the opportunity to mod the game in a way that at least I was not previously aware had been attempted or accomplished.
That sure is quite technical, everything you said.
Yeah, I come from a computer science background. I'm a programmer. So really, there wasn't any sort of existing tool that I've seen that could allow these mods to exist. So this is as bare bones as it is. The files on your computer are, a list of ones and zeros. And really what we're doing is just taking advantage of the fact that you can modify files in that format to sort of inject your modified ones and zeros over the ones and zeros of the original file, and it turns to work out perfectly.
Should we discuss the beta stuff we found out, or the the demos, or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was it was when we first started talking about this game. I think it was interesting that we learned a lot by following a similar process to what you had seen with Spider-Man 2000, where there was so much information that we learned about the development of the game by searching for those press release information and the beta discs that you guys came across. It's funny that we can learn a lot of the similar aspects of the game from looking from the similar perspective on the Disney Interactive side, especially with this beta release of the game that was packaged in a demo CD containing demos from multiple different PS1 games, including a demo for Toy Story 2. Luckily, in the case of Toy Story, it was a little bit easier to track down a beta build or a demo version, which, you know, the user Juan MV94 documented this demo version of the game fairly extensively over on the cutting room floor, which was really great to see because it opened up a lot of really interesting avenues for this title as well. Now, if I understand correctly, you actually had the chance to explore the this version of the game as well. Could you speak a little bit to what you found and how you were able to access things beyond just what the original PlayStation demo disc allowed?
Okay, so yeah, in the original demo, you only had access to the first level, Andy's house, which it still had some changes, but not extensive. And then in the files, it actually contains levels for the second level, Andy's backyard. The slime boss level, I forgot its title, but it's titled the third level, which can also be seen in a image for like a unused level select thing. And there's also a really unfinished version of the level Owl's Penthouse, which I'll explain a lot later. And there's also when you complete a level, when you complete any demo level, even if it's one of the unaccessed ones, it shows like a little like fly camera view of the elevator level, which has no entities in it, and that level is actually playable in the thing. The guy, I haven't tried it, but the guy in that cutting room floor page tried it, and apparently it works. And it's basically, it's pretty much the exact same as the final, according to him, but it just doesn't have any of the entities or objects, pretty much. And see, I'll talk about the actual other levels. In Andy's backyard, the army men are, their sounds and models, they look different. The actual tree itself has like the layout is the same, but the tree branch models are different, and in my opinion, it makes it like a lot harder to climb up. And it took me a very long time just to get to the top and beat the Zerg, just to beat the Zerg Kite boss, which was actually quite a challenge in this beta. Yeah, I bet the actual like beta testers definitely got like pissed off at the fact that it was so hard, and they're like, all right, yeah, we definitely need to like add something so it's not as hard.
Yeah, it definitely became a hallmark of the final release that you would be able to sort of checkpoint yourself on some of those more difficult puzzles, like having the ability for that work elevator to go up on the construction yard, or to be able to drop various shovels and ropes, or push over books and things like that to shortcut some of the puzzles in the game, so you didn't always have to start from square one. But it's interesting to see that it wasn't present in this draft of the game.
So yeah, that whole like fixing the level so it's not as hard, it reminds me of the Spider-Man 2000 beta Carnage level, which so originally in the beta, the Carnage level was a shit ton harder. How it worked is you had to knock him into the bubble, but Carnage wouldn't actually stay in the bubble. He'd take damage, but he just walk right back out, and the bubble would only turn on like every 10 seconds for only like 5 seconds. So you had to time it right, and then you just have to try and keep him in there. And the bubble also did barely any damage as well. So
yeah, it's funny because Carnage in that video recap where you covered all of his voice lines, he's got that one line about, you know, if you think this is hard, you should have seen the focus test.
Wait, what was that, a line?
Yeah, that's one of the lines. He says, "You think this is hard? You should have seen the focus test."
I don't remember that. I'm checking that. I don't remember that.
It's on your channel. It's one of the lines. It's also in the kid mode version. There's a version of that line.
I'm checking. Holy shit. Oh my god, yeah, I found it.
You think this is hard? You should have seen it before the focus tests!
Yeah, holy shit, I did not know that. I wonder if that's actual reference to the old copy because those lines weren't Carnage did actually not use any of the lines in the beta version. Like he was very quiet. So they might have been recorded after that build. So people must have obviously found it hard and they decided to make it a joke. Okay, yeah, back on topic.
Yeah, back to Toy Story World. You were walking us through some of the demo files.
There's not a lot of changes in Andy's backyard. I'll speak about how I actually accessed these levels later. So, okay, next level is Alleys and Gullies. No, it wasn't Alleys and Gullies, there was one after it. Slime Attack, I think it was.
Yeah, the slime boss, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, he's in it. There's no images of it on the Cutting Room 4 page, so I'll probably release some footage of it sometime, and also including all the other levels if I haven't already before this upload. So yeah, the Alleys and Gullies boss, how it works is you in the final version you'd spam him with your laser to kill him, which wasn't too hard. But then in the beta version, you can only hurt him in lock mode. So you have to go into the lock view and spam it in there. It's possible. I've tried it, but it'll take a long time to do it, and he also takes quite a bit of health down. So yeah, you have to do that. That's a new process, but I think I haven't compared them side by side yet, but the actual slime boss itself looks a bit different, like its model. Like it looks a bit more like chunky, I guess. A lot more like blocky. Yeah, you can talk about your modding thing now. How you got it working, I guess.
Yeah, so I was first sort of turned on to this by the idea that there's this texture that exists in the level 8 folder that is actually a beta texture for the Spaceland level, whereas it was originally titled Al Space Barn. Thank God they changed that. It textures a couple models that are actually invisible in the final release, so it kind of explains some of those things. But it did sort of reveal that the NGN files contained all the textures for the game. Yeah, so earlier today, actually, I mapped out all of the textures in the entire game. So I found where every texture that ever appears is located in which file, and I've sort of mapped out that entire archive, and that was a file that I shared with you earlier. So essentially, you can go through that and you can figure out where any texture exists, and then you can use the same texture mod method at any point just to sort of find where it exists in the file, replace the binary, and keep going. There are a couple of duplicates, and there are a couple of beta textures I actually came across packaged into the NGN files that were never changed. There's leftovers from A Bug's Life, which was the previous game that Traveler's Tales produced under their Disney Interactive contract. Yep. So there's the training level, but there's also a couple of other things. I believe one of the specular objects, which appears in any reflective surface in the game, is actually a specular from Bug's Life. There's another, not a training, but some sort of success image that appears in the game files. It's also from A Bug's Life. And I think if you look at the actual CD-ROM, which I am fortunate enough to have back from 1999, if you go into the CD folder and you go into the RT libs folder, there's a file in here for A Bug's Life. It's actually a music file. It's pretty funny. It was just left over in the CD. It's in where is it? It's in the media folder. Yep, bugs.wave. It's up there with the icons for the Toy Story game. Just somehow found its way through the splash screen and stuff like that. So yeah, lots of cool stuff left over from previous work. So a lot of what we're talking about here may apply to other Disney Interactive contract games for Traveler's Tales, and who knows what else, right? Because like I said, this is really the brass tacks of modding. It's just adjusting the binary with the hexadecimal viewer. It may work for other uncompressed assets. Now, fortunately, if we are interested in sort of sharing the textures or sharing the mods, it's a lot easier to do that than it is to make them. You just share the texture file and then it just it can have all these things together. You just have to be careful that when your texture pack is going to basically involve all the assets that are in that NGN file. So you couldn't have necessarily one person's loading screen and another person's Buzz Lightyear skin, because they'd be in different files. You could merge them, of course, but you would but you can just distribute the NGN files, and that'll do the trick.
I'm annoyed how you have to replace every single Buzz asset in each level. That'll be quite a process and annoying.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about in the near future automating all of this for the community. Like I said, I'm a computer programmer. I can very easily imagine how this could be automated and just some sort of client program constructed to allow you to modify these textures and insert them into the files with some sort of macro definitions for Buzz or for other textures that you might want to commonly modify. So that might be something that I can share in the near future to assist with the sort of revitalization of the game with new textures, if that's something the community is interested in. Yeah, really anything. I have not found a texture in the game that hasn't been mapped out in the repository that I provided you today.
I want to try fix the Zerg texture, because in the game, Zerg, he looks kind of strange, these textures. I want to try to make his purple more vibrant and fix his mouth, make it look more bright. I'll try to fix Zerg a bit. But I'm happy with the Andy's house texture.
Well, God, that's so creepy. One thing to note is that the names of the files are very deceptive, and that's something that I sort of discovered today as I was looking through it. If it says level 1, the NGN files in there may or may not correspond to level 1. So it's possible that you only have to modify, like we've been talking about, needing to modify Buzz over and over again to get them in all the different levels. I'm not actually sure that's the case. It may be that it's going to persist through multiple levels because it's all running together in the file system. There's stuff from the Zerg fight in the level 2 database. There's the textures, and some of the level data. I'll tell you exactly which one. Let me just look through my. Yep, it is file 12 in level 1.ngn. Unless that's the kite, because they do look similar. But I think he's got a blaster. I think that's him.
Well, does it show? Does it show the elevator textures, like the map?
Well, remember these NGN files are sort of tiled out, and so it's got the Emperor Zerg loading file, but there's elevator stuff in there, it looks like. But yeah, you're going to be looking for level 1.ngn inside of the level 2 folder.
Okay, so what should we discuss next?
Well, I'd love to talk about future plans and sort of what's on the table and what we might want to do moving forward.
Yeah, we've been recording for 41 for nearly an hour.
Wow. Yeah.
That's quick.
It's going by fast, and this is a lot of fun to look through this game. Not one that I originally thought was going to be super laudable, but it definitely is, thanks to a lot of this legacy stuff that's over. So personally, on my side of things, I'm interested in trying to access those 3D models again. They're stored as .all files, which is some proprietary format. I don't know what that 3D model is, so if anyone knows more about that, I'd definitely love to look at those. The .anm files, I assume, are the animations that correspond. Like I mentioned earlier, I'd be interested if the community is sort of interested in this idea of developing a tool to make the texture mod easier. We'll talk in a separate video about exactly how to do it right now, but maybe a tool that automates it. If there's a lot of community interest, I could potentially develop that for you guys. And just continuing to sort of create textures for the game and learn more about the history and maybe Easter eggs, because there's definitely some stuff in here that is worth looking into, and just continuing to unpack the binaries and see what's around, and just tear this game apart a little bit more and see how it was put together.
Hey guys, post initial recording Anganov here. Me and KentAshfield never actually recorded an outro for this video, so here it is. Sorry about it ending so abruptly. Soon I'll be releasing a tutorial with the legend himself, KentAshfield, explaining how to mod Toy Story 2 so you can create your own texture mods, and hopefully a modding community for this game can start. I'm aware I said that I would talk about some stuff in the video which I didn't end up doing, but it's extremely likely that anything I forgot to mention is in the Toy Story 2 PS1 cut-in room floor page. I'll leave a link for that in the description, as it's also just a very interesting article in general, and if you enjoy Spider-Man 2000 beta stuff, then you should find some some form of interest in this game's development as well. Big thanks to Kent Ashfield for starring in this discussion video. If you wish to speak to him about Toy Story 2 Modern, his contact information will be in the description. I'm aware this sounds cheesy, but thanks for watching something of mine that isn't Spider-Man 2000 for once.